Welcome to the Keynote Basics. This is a beginning user keynote for those of you that are on iPads. And so there's a couple things to get us started. First of all, you will have a copy of this keynote. We'll be sending you a link to that as well. And that will allow you to go in and actually follow along with me as I go through this as well. So there'll be times where I'll take pauses for you to actually try some of the activities. So don't feel like you have to watch the entire video straight through. Be sure to pause it and try some of the challenges that I'm giving you as well. So the first thing we're going to want to make sure you do is turn on your presenter notes. And you can see here on the screen and also on the keynote that I've delivered to you that you have a couple different ways to do that. One on a MacBook and then on an iPad. Since we're doing an iPad here, I'm going to click on this little, it looks like a little kind of a box, a collage icon in the upper left corner. And there I'm going to click on slide to show presenter notes. And it says there, you can see, you should see these notes here. And that tells me that my presenter notes are on. I'm just going to click off of that and continue on to the next slide. Now, there's some important tools you're going to want to be aware of that you can see here. In the upper right corner, of course, on an iPad, those are where most of your tools you're going to be focusing on. There's a play button there that you can click to play your slides. There's a little slide layout. Usually the paintbrush is where I spend most of my time. The plus button, of course, when you're adding things like graphs or any types of text boxes or basic things, or, of course, images from your camera roll and audio and things like that. And then the last couple buttons, this is for collaboration. If you want to collaborate with another person, you can now do that in Keynote. And then, of course, over here, the ... the triple dot menu, that's where you see a lot of your extra features, rehearsing your Keynote, things like that, going to Keynote Live, which I'll talk about at the end of this presentation, and some other various settings that we won't really get into during the beginner guide. Throughout the presentation, you may hear me reference something called the navigation bar. That's this kind of sidebar over to the left. You can kind of see me moving it up and down right now. That's, of course, that's where most of your slides are laid out. You can view this in different ways. Actually, if you click back up into our little toggle up there in the upper left corner, you notice that it's slide view. You can also go to what's something called light table view, which is kind of handy if you're needing to rearrange slides. But for the most part, I stay in slide view because I want to be able to see it kind of similar to a PowerPoint or any other Google presentation that you're used to. Now, formatting is, of course, that paintbrush that I talked about, and this changes based on what object you're touching. So right now, when I click on the paintbrush, it shows me that I've got different things I can do with this slide because I've got the slide selected. But watch what happens if I tap on the, let's say, the text box there. Notice some other menus pop up. But I'm going to click on that paintbrush again, and now all of a sudden I see some other options. So now I can do different things because now it's highlighted the text box. If I want to make this text box a different color, I can. If I want to go to text and actually change the size, I can increase the size of it. I can do lots of different things with that. And if I wanted to, of course, I can arrange it, move it from back to front, flip it around, lock it if I don't want it moving around. So lots of little extra features in there whenever you tap on an object. You'll notice that right away. If I tap on this picture here, you'll notice that there are some other choices that come up. Now I can edit the object. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So again, the important thing to remember here is whatever you do, make sure that whenever you're tapping on an object, that's going to be the one you use to format to change the format of the object. So if you're running into a problem where like I can't figure out how to change the background of this text box here, make sure that you've selected it first. And you can tell you selected it because you can kind of see the little dots on either side of it there. Animation, we'll get into that as well, and it's a way to make objects basically appear or disappear or move around on the screen. And there's a little bit about slide transitions, which we'll talk about too. So just be aware of that. Animation on an iPad doesn't appear as a top menu item. It actually appears when you tap on an item. Like if I tapped on this box, you'll see the word Animate appear. And when I click on that, it actually brings up a field of menus as well as light up a big blue bar across the top of the screen. And so now I have my actions to build, to add an action, or to build out. Again, build out and build in is the same as appear and disappear, but they have some fun little ways to do that as well to kind of help with your presentation. And when you're done with that, you just hit done, and that goes away. Now, the last thing I'll just quickly mention here is that there is some advantage to changing the document size, and that's kind of in that ... menu right there. You can see here, if I go to document setup, I get a few options of sizes of what I can do down at the bottom. First of all, I can choose a different theme if I like, or if I want to click on slide size, now you've got some different options where you can actually do a taller slide, a narrow slide, a square slide, of course, or a custom slide, which is really handy if you're doing things like infographics or making posters and things like that. You can export every slide as an image. So think about that in the future if you're having to rearrange some icons and things like that. You don't have to go to a website or pay for expensive software. You can actually build that right on Keynote and then just export it as an image. It's kind of handy to have. For our first challenge, we're actually going to talk about this. We already talked about slide size. But we're actually going to change the background. So I'm going to go to my template, my kind of challenge slide here. And you can tell it's a challenge because down below in the notes, of course, if your presenter notes are showing, you see what the challenge says. And I've written the instructions here for you. I'm going to hide the notes just to make it a little bit easier on myself. And I'll just go to there and hide notes. But essentially what you need to do is make sure you select the slide itself. So again, if I tap on these words, all of a sudden that's going to be the thing that changes. I don't want the words to change. I want the slide to change. So I'm going to tap off the words. I'm actually going to tap on the background or even tap on the slide over in the left and make sure that it's selected. Now when I go to Paintbrush, notice that you don't have a lot of options here, but basically one of the options is change your background color. So I'm going to go ahead and change my background color. Did that. Looks good. I'm ready to move on to my next item. Let me double check my notes here. Yep, did everything it said. Now, why don't you go ahead and try that as well? So take a moment to go onto the slide, or you can either make a blank slide and change the color, or use the template I shared with you, and use that to change the color, again, the background of a slide. This next part is all about adding shapes and text boxes. So in order to do this, it's going to take a little bit of dexterity with the fingers as you get to move things on the iPad screen. Let's go to our slide number 11 here, and you can see that here we have a new challenge. It's about first of all, adding a shape to this slide. So I'm going to click on where it says the plus button. And there's all sorts of shapes lined out here. Yours may be on photos, it may be on charts or graphs. But if you click on the little square and circle, you'll see lots of different shapes, and it probably says something like basic, where you've got text and some basic boxes. But you can see here, if you slide over, you can actually see lots of different objects. In fact, I'm going to go back to where I was, which was nature, and I'm just going to drop this big tree in here. Now, the problem with this, sometimes what people think is like, oh, if I just click on that object and pinch and zoom it with my fingers, it's going to actually zoom the object. But all it's actually doing is zooming the slide. So what you have to do is hold down with one finger on one of those little handles there, and that's how you stretch it out. Now, the next thing we're asked to do on the challenge is to actually change the color. So again, remember what I said earlier, if you tap off of it, now you're changing the color of the background. If you tap on it, now you're changing the color of the tree itself. So I'm going to tap on that and then click brush and then go to my style. And I have lots of different fill colors here, lots of different ones I could choose from. I could make it lots of different colors, a gradient if I wanted to. I could actually drop an image in there if I wanted to do something like that. I'm just going to change it to kind of a nice green and then tap out of that. So now I got my nice green. Now, we changed the size a little bit, but what I want to do is rotate it. Rotating an object is not as simple as you may think either, even though it is kind of a touch screen here. You have to kind of hold a finger in the center of the object, and then with the second finger, you're going to want to hold and move around, almost like you're using a dial, like you're dialing a knob. So again, hold down with one finger in the center and then drag the other finger around to kind of get it to rotate a little bit. Now, the next thing we could do is add a text box to this. So there's a couple ways to do that. One is I could just double tap inside the object itself, and here I could type the actual object or what it is. So you notice that it is actually a text box itself, and that now is tied to that. But what I want to do for this is I'm going to click add, and I'm going to find text boxes. Now, they don't come inherently. You notice right up here there's graphs and charts and things I've already mentioned. You actually have to go back to the basic objects, and you'll notice that the upper left there's one that says text. That's how you actually add just kind of a floating standalone text box. And here you could say, here is a tree. And then what you can, of course, do is if you wanted to, you could change the shape of that text box by clicking on this. Paintbrush, giving it, if you want it to match, you could do that. Kind of hard to see it there. There we go. I'll move it over here so I can see a little bit better. And if I wanted to, I can go down text and actually increase the size of it a little bit. There we go. And of course, you could also change the color of the text right there if you wanted to. If you wanted it just to be a different color, maybe a yellow. So there we have another text box. So you've now gotten a couple different objects there. You've added a different shape. You can add a different color if you wanted to. If I wanted to, I can continue to add some other shapes. I can straighten up that tree. I can add some other things that may appear in nature. Just continue to kind of try out and test out some of the different features you're going to do. We're going to get into shapes more in the intermediate version, but for now I just want you to be comfortable knowing where the shapes are, how to change the color of them, and how to change their size. And of course, using text boxes, which is a powerful tool too, to actually help you with any type of information you're trying to get across to your learner. Probably one of the most powerful features I've always enjoyed on Keynote is the alpha and masking tools. And these are tools, masking is another word for cropping, which I think most people are familiar with, so I won't get too much into that. But alpha is a tool that I think is pretty well hidden, and one that I've found that makes Keynote unique when it comes to style presentations. And so what I've got on slide number 13 here is just a simple white chair. What I want to do is I want to remove the white from that background there. And this is just an image. You know, a lot of times you'll pull an image off the internet maybe, and it's got a white background, and it looks interesting, but you may want to get rid of that. So what I'm going to do is, of course, tap on the object, because that's what we need to do anything with it, right? Always tap on it first. We're going to go to our paintbrush, and you'll notice now, because it's an image, we've got some new options here. So we, of course, change the style if you wanted to, add a border, maybe a shadow. But under the image header, you notice there's edit mask, which of course we could use to crop if we wanted to, or instant alpha, which is again one of the more powerful features of this tool that I love about Keynote. So I'm going to click on that. And now what I can do is just hold my finger down on the white there and kind of drag a little bit, just drag over a little. Notice what's happening here. It's moving all those little areas of white and just clicking and dragging my finger across those there. And I'm going to hit done. And now I've got an object that's actually got a transparent background. So if I wanted to, I could put something behind it. I can move it around. It's almost like an icon now, which is a really powerful use of that. So you'll come across objects all the time that just have white backgrounds, and there's a quick way to remove it using the Instant Alpha tool. Go ahead and give that a try on that chair there before we move on to the next one. So for here, I've added kind of a harder challenge for you. And what I want you to do on this one is you're going to actually use alpha to remove the white background of the dwarf there, Gimli, as he's called. So I'm going to go to alpha, and I'm just going to remove this background here, get rid of that little bit under there and a little bit under his arm. I might have to zoom in a little bit. There we go. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I need to crop his name there because I don't want his name appearing. So again, cropping is the same thing as mask. So I'm going to move this over a little bit so I can see it a little better. Go to Edit Mask. And now I'm just going to drag that little dot up a little bit, the little handles there, and then hit Done. And now notice his name is now gone. I could resize him. He's a bigger object now. Let me zoom out a little bit so I can see my entire slide. Next, I need to change the background color, something not black, because it's really hard to manage this. So I'm going to click off of him and make sure that I'm on the background, on the slide itself over here. And now I'm going to change the background. I'm going to make it maybe a deep red here. All right, there we go. That looks nice. And then last, this is again kind of a harder challenge here because this is very small lettering here, but try to remove the background around the Lord of the Rings banner using alpha. So for this, I'm going to pinch and zoom in pretty tight, tap on that banner, click on my instant alpha, and then just slowly start removing some of these little dots in between the letters and see what it looks like when I get rid of some of these. Again, just tapping with my finger, kind of tap and drag, tap and drag, tap and drag to get rid of those little holes there. It looks like I've got most of it already. Let me zoom out a little bit. Ah, yeah, it's looking good. Hit Done. Now we've got a nice banner there with our little Lord of the Rings guy there standing. And if I go to my final, you can actually see what I intended it to look like, pretty close to what I was actually trying to do there as well. So go ahead and give that a try. Try to use Instant Alpha to remove the white background and try to remove the black background. So just so you notice, Instant Alpha removes any background color that you're on. And if you drag it out too far, I'll show you an example of what that looks like here. If I click on, let's click on Gimli and go to Instant Alpha again. If I accidentally click on, like, let's say his beard and start dragging, notice what's going to happen is it's going to continue to highlight colors that are similar or closer. And the wider I get on that drag, the more stuff that's going to disappear. So if I just let go here and then hit Done, all of a sudden he's kind of almost too transparent, right? Now you can see through him. So you got to be careful on some of that. Of course, the undo button is our friend, which is up here in the upper left corner, that little return arrow. So I'm going to get him back to form there. But again, that's what Instant Alpha does. It basically clicks on whatever color you're removing and just starts to remove it. The wider you spread it out, the more it removes. So be careful about that, but it's really good with solid backgrounds. Next, we'll talk about a feature that is now being in most presentation types of software like PowerPoint and Google Slides, and that is the idea that you can now kind of align and order things on a slide. So in this case, I'm going to here's my practice slide here, and the challenge is to center the text box. And so what I do is I click on that, and you'll notice the little guides that pop up, the little yellow guides. If I drag it right there, it clicks in form right there in mid-center, which is great. Now what I need to do is take this rectangle, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move it right on top and center it. But notice number 2, it says put the rectangle behind it. So in order to do that, I need to go again back to the paintbrush. And since we're not changing the style or the text, I'm just going to go on arrange as the subtitle. And notice you've got some options. You can move it all the way to the very front, or you could slide it all the way to the very back, which is a nice feature that you can only do on an iPad. You can't actually do that on a MacBook. So it's great to see the different layers and how further up or back you can actually make your layers. So now that box is in the middle. And then the next thing I want to do is move the circles into each corner to make sure they're evenly aligned. So I'm just going to grab this first one, kind of put it where I feel like is a good corner. I'm going to drag this one. Notice what's happening here. It's actually centering on the line of the upper circle. And I'm going to move this one kind of out of the way for a minute and make sure I get this one nice and centered. So it's nice and even with that one. Move it over here. And then this last one should click up just right. There it is, centered on both the top and center circle. Now I've got all 4 circles evenly spaced to make nice center alignment. So again, that's just practicing your alignment feature in Keynote. Like any presentation tool or software, there's lots of different ways you can have transitions and animations. In Keynote, on an iPad, it's a little bit different than it would be on a MacBook. So even though you see that box there where it says add an effect, on a Keynote, there actually isn't an animate button up in the upper right corner. So like I mentioned at the very beginning, in order to animate an object, you're going to actually have to click on the object. So I'm going to click on the box in this case, and I'm going to click on the word animate that popped up there. And that'll open up this secondary menu. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a build of some sort. And there's all these different options down here. This is kind of a nice new feature of Keynote where it actually kind of shows you a little example of what it's doing. So there's a fly-in with the airplane, iris. If you move over more, you get lots more kind of different objects here. So if I wanted to, I could have it drop like an anvil, which is one of my favorites. And it even gives you a little preview of what that looks like there. And if you like it, just hit done and it'll save it. So there I added an effect and chose an animation. Now if I want to play it to actually watch it happen, I need to click on the play button, and I'm going to play on the iPad. Now you notice it's not there. If I tap the screen, boom, there comes my square. Pinch out and zoom out of that. Now I can see that as well. Just like I made an object appear, I can also do the same to make an object disappear. So for this one, I'm going to click on the box. I'm going to click on Animate, and I'm going to hit the word build, add a build out, which is the word for basically making the object disappear. And in this case, I'm going to find something really fun. I think I might set it on fire if it gives me that option. Oh, there we go, some flame. That's always fun. And there you can see the kind of the flame going there. And now I'm going to hit done. And that's going to keep that object and that from actually happening. And so when I click on play, I will see it tap, and there goes my object. It just blew up in flames. There's a couple of different effects you can do with action, and that is actually having the object do something. So in this case, I'm going to show you what happens when you do something called an opacity, where the object actually fades kind of a little bit to reveal a hidden word. So I'm going to tap on the object, hit animate. I'm going to choose add action this time, which is in the middle. And I have my actions there. I have some paths. I have opacity. I can make the object rotate. You can make it scale. There's some other additional objects movements you can do with popping and jiggling and pulsing and things like that. But for this case, I'm just going to hit opacity. And what this will do is it'll actually make the object kind of just fade just a little bit to reveal a secret word. I'm going to hit done. Now let me play that to see how it looks. Tap. Ah, nice. It revealed the secret word. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this object here, but this is a little bit different. Instead of having it fade, I'm actually going to have it move and blink and do some extra things. So first I'm going to tap on the arrow, hit animate, and I'm going to add an action. And I'm going to actually create a path and have it move. So I'm just going to have it move kind of across the screen a little bit here, and a little wiggly line there. Of course, you can also make it a little straight if you wanted to. Notice at the bottom there's squiggly line and there's straight lines. I'm going to say done. I like the way that works. Now, what you can also do is add other animation. So notice down at the bottom, there's a plus arrow there. And if I click on that, I can add another action. So in this case, I'm going to actually have the arrow bounce a little bit. So after it gets over there, it should actually bounce. Gives you a little preview of what that looks like, and that looks good. I like that one. And I'm going to hit done there. So now when I play it, arrow moves over a little bit, and with another tap, it'll bounce. Zoom out of that. Lastly, the one thing you might want to look for is the fact that you can have your build order do lots of different things. Build order is basically if you want a series of animations all happening at the same time. So I'll go back to that slide I just did, and I'm going to tap on animate. And notice in the upper right corner, there's a little dot, kind of like a sandwich bar menu right next to the done button. If I tap on that, I can see the two animations I just built. So one was move and one was bounce. And notice down at the bottom, if I wanted to, I could click on the bounce and I say, you know what, I want that to happen after the build. So after it moves, I want it to bounce. I don't want to have to keep clicking on it to make it do all the things I want it to do. Also at this point, if I wanted to, I could add a little bit of a delay on there. I could hit preview and see what it looks like. So here's a preview of it. There it moves. There's it bouncing, all with one click again. So that's kind of a way to combine animations in a simple and easy way. One little tip about organizing your slides, and this goes to different people or different preferences, but for me, I like to sometimes have ways where I can actually organize my slides over on the left to have almost like an outline. So for example, if I wanted to have this slide kind of ducked under the other one, you notice there's a little caret over on the far left. If I click it, it actually kind of hides some of the next slides. It's not really hiding the slide, it's just keeping it in order, so I can kind of keep my slides in some sort of form or fashion. It's almost like having an outline. And in order to do that, all you have to do, I'll go back up here a little bit, and let's say I want this one to appear underneath the guides and alignment. So I'm just going to click and hold down and drag it in a little bit. And I'm going to do the same with the slide underneath it. Click and hold down and drag in a little bit. And maybe I went in a little too far. I don't need it underneath the other one necessarily, but I'll leave it there for now. And now I click on that caret and notice that those are now underneath that guides and alignment. So if I click on that, all the slides that have to do with that are under there. As I scroll down, I could do this with each one of these. So each one of these main title slides could be like a header. Again, has to do mostly with organization. One other thing you can do is actually hide slides. So if I wanted to hide the slide, I could tap and click on it and notice where it says skip slide. And what it does is it makes the slide kind of get squished. So when I'm actually playing the slideshow, it'll actually skip the slide. So it'll go from that slide to straight to the next challenge, which I don't want it to do necessarily. So I want to unskip that one. So I'm going to tap on that slide and unskip it. Now if I click on it and play, it's going to go right into that slide that I just skipped. One of my favorite features of Keynote is the magic move. This is something, again, that's exclusive to Keynote, and it really is a great way to create animations, great transitions without a lot of programming knowledge. So something that may take me, this example I'm going to show you may take me about an hour to build in some sort of animation software. I could do it pretty quickly just using Keynote and this magic move transition, which happens in between slides. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that first slide, and you notice here I have a kind of a hand with a white background and a big ring from Lord of the Rings. And what I want to do is I want to make that ring to look like it's shrinking while the hand is actually coming up from the bottom of the screen and actually having it land on the screen. And so what I need to do is this. I'm going to actually zoom out a little bit. I'm going to take this hand and I'm going to remove the white background. Hopefully you remember how to do that. We're going to click on our paintbrush here and hit Instant Alpha. And again, I'm just going to drag and get rid of that white, and then done. Now what I'm going to do is I have it zoomed out pretty far. I'm going to actually hide the hand down off the slide so people won't be able to see it when it starts. Now that I have that ready, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy and paste and duplicate the slide. I'm copying it, pasting it. I've duplicated the slide. So what we want to have happen is on the second slide is we want it to be where we want everything to end up. So I'm going to move the hand up because I want the hand to kind of come up after the transition, make it look like it's not cut off quite all the way. I'm going to take this ring and I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to put it, it's not on top of the hand. Do you remember how to do that? Yeah, we have to go to the paintbrush again, go to our range, move it up to the front. Now that ring should drop right on top of that hand there. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is go back to my first slide where the ring is, my hand is off and the ring is big in the middle there. And I'm going to add an transition. So doing that, you tap on the slide on the navigation bar, hit the word transition. I'm going to hit add transition, and I'm going to hit magic move. It actually gives you a little preview of what's going to happen in just a minute. So I'm going to hit done. I don't necessarily need to duplicate in this case because I've already duplicated it, so I'm going to hit cancel. And now let's play it and see how it turns out. There's my big ring. Tap, go to the next slide, the hand comes up, ring shrinks, boom. all done pretty quickly with a little magic move transition. Teachers, you could use this with all sorts of things if you want to show objects growing or interacting. Again, the big thing to remember is whatever you have on the first slide and whatever you want on the second slide, basically the magic move is going to create all the animations for you to get to that finishing slide. So all you need to have is first slide to second slide, and that's it. Of course, now you've made this great Keynote file. Now, how do you export it to your students? So much like anything you've ever worked with on an iPad, you click on the little triple dot and you see a little share square there, which you see in quite a few different applications as a way to export this. Now you can actually share it, lots of different tools. You can use, if you have your LMS tied to this, you could drop it right in there. You can make a copy of it, or you can even airdrop it to yourself. You can see my MacBook is right near me, so I could actually airdrop it to my MacBook if I wanted to. The other thing is, and let's say not everybody is a Keynote user, maybe you're sending this to parents or something, there's an export button there. You can click on that export button and it'll actually send it in lots of different formats. So you can see there's PDF, PowerPoint. Let's say you're recording something, you can actually send it as a movie. If you made that little animation, you can actually send it as an animated GIF, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, if you made a poster or something like that, you could send it as an image. So there's lots of different ways and formats that you can actually export this and get it out to your users. Now, much like Google Docs, you can actually share and collaborate your Keynote and actually have people work on it in real time. To do this, there's a little bit of trickery with the iCloud and making sure students are logged into their actual device with their Apple ID. But you click on that little person up in the upper right corner, a little silhouette with the plus, and then you'll see some options of how you want to share it. So I can share it via Gmail. I could share it via lots of different options. I can click on my share options. You can actually lock it if you wanted to, if you want them only to view it. You can want them to make changes. Usually the best option I've found is to click, instead of people, you invite anyone with a link. And then of course you can add a password if you wanted to, if you really want to keep it safe. But then at that point, all I have to do is go copy link. And once I copy the link, I can share that with anybody. When they open it, I'll see that they're actually in the Keynote with me. So now collaboration is starting. It may take it a second to kick in here, but once it kicks in, then you'll be able to actually see. If I want notifications, you could do that too. In that case, it'll tell you when someone's made a change to the actual Keynote itself. And now notice that the little icon now has a checkbox next to it. If I click on that, I can see who else has been added. So you'll see other people's names populated in it. It's kind of a neat way to see who's actually working on what part of that Keynote. One other feature that's kind of new that's similar to Nearpod is the idea that you can do Keynote Live. Now, this is a powerful tool if you wanted kids to follow along with you, let's say in the classroom at the same time on their devices, or if you're teaching them remotely, you could actually send them a link to your Keynote and you could drive your Keynote while they follow along with you. So if you've built a lot of great slides in Keynote and you want to share that with them, the one thing I'll mention here is to make sure you actually save it to iCloud. So you're gonna have to make sure iCloud is turned on your iPad before you do this. And then what you do is you click on the dot, 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 and you click on Keynote Live settings. And then what you can get is you're ready to invite your viewers. So you can invite your viewers any different ways, through LMS, through email. If you wanted to, you can actually just take the link here and copy the link to it and send that to them. And then when they open the link, it'll basically be on and they can just follow along. Now, if you're not live, you're not actually presenting, you'll notice also here it says play on Keynote Live or play on this iPad. So if I actually, and it'll tell me how many people are viewing. So if no one's joined and I hit play on Keynote Live, it doesn't really matter because no one's gonna see it. But I can also see who's following along with me while I'm going. So if no one has joined me, I'm just gonna skip that part for now. Again, this would be neat if you wanted to kind of manage their devices remotely and have them follow along with you if you have videos and things like that. Again, just another feature. That takes us to the end of Keynote Basics. If you made it this far, then you've made it all the way to the end. Hopefully you've enjoyed this beginner tutorial, learned things like Magic Move and Instant Alpha, how to arrange things, how to create animations. We'll be moving on to intermediate, where we'll do some larger moves, combining some of the skills that we learned in this first tutorial. So hopefully if you're joining me on that course, you'll enjoy that as well. And also I hope you had time to actually experiment and play with the slides themselves and try the challenges on for yourself during this presentation. Thank you and have a great day.